Republican Congressman Rich McCormick of Georgia, a former Marine and emergency physician who rarely misses an opportunity to invoke his military credentials, takes the floor not to ask questions, but to deliver what can only be described as a carefully rehearsed infomercial for the administration's war. Rather than holding the Pentagon accountable, as oversight hearings are designed to do, McCormick spends his allotted time rewriting history, pinning decades of complex Middle East policy failures squarely on Democrats and hand-feeding talking points to a willing witness.
Gentleman from Georgia, Mr. McCormick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm actually going to help explain this to one of my peers here as we do this hearing, because I think I know where you're going with this. And it's just, with the statements you've made, I know what you're talking about when you talk about getting involved in Iran in a forever war. Would you consider this a forever war?
No, sir.
In some ways, I would say we've been at war with them for about 50 years. We've been attacked over 40 times through their proxies and their weaponry. We've had Georgians recently killed by their weaponry. He just talked about, my friend from the other side of the aisle just talked about the 6 lives we lost. We lost over 200 Marines in one day from Iranian proxies. Some of them were my friends. I have a buddy of mine who was blown out of a window that day who I played rugby with for many years. He'll never forget that. We don't forget. The fact is, the Biden administration and the Obama administration have both given them money, billions of dollars, and allowed them to have access to billions of dollars that have funded terrorism throughout the Middle East and the world. And quite frankly, they were nearing the precipice of nuclear arms. And then on top of that, they were able to produce about 100 advanced weaponry platforms as we opposed them with about 7 during the same time frame of about a month. They're outproducing us with something much cheaper too. Would you say that that new information, that new technology has kind of also changed our foreign policy in that region, knowing that Iran now has become disproportionately more powerful and more of a threat to the United States and the entire world in its stability?
Well, thanks, Congressman. I would say you're right, absolutely right, and agreed to put your finger on the reconstitution of Iran's missile and drone capability and so forth, and the balance between Iran has been at a weaker point after Operation Midnight Hammer and the 12-day war. But we could see, as the Secretary pointed out the other day, that Iran was going to build up a conventional shield from which it could then seek to again resume its nuclear ambitions. So this was the time to take action in a way that's consistent with the strategy, which is, of course, with Israel, with our Gulf partners. Now we're seeing partners from around the world in a way that was scoped and attainable military objectives. Those are the objectives of the campaign. And so I think that's why it's going to be, and it's not going to be a forever war. It's not going to be a nation-building effort, as the President and the Secretary have made clear.
I think that's the take-home for me, is that when you show strength, when you develop relationships with other nations, and the Abraham Accords, and seeing the other countries in that region that traditionally were not friendly to us historically. When I was there in the 90s, I was stationed in the Persian Gulf and deployed there several times. We didn't have the relationship we have now. This huge advancement was made through the first Trump administration with the Abraham Accords. Has benefited us in amazing ways, not just economically, but strategically and militarily in that region. I think times have changed. And I want to point out, I was going to make this all about the Marine Corps and the amphibious shipping, because that's what I focus on typically. But I think this is much bigger than all that. It doesn't matter how many Marines you put there. I'm not talking about boots on the ground. It is a limited projected war. Now, you could say it's a war. I don't care if you don't want to characterize that or not. It doesn't matter. To me, it's all about destroying Iran's capability in a very unstable regime with unstable leadership. When I say unstable, mentally unstable. People that could start a nuclear holocaust. Anybody who's read the book Nuclear War should be scared to death of a country with 2 nuclear arms. Times have changed. Technology have changed, and the threat has changed. And I think what's your point, and I want you to summarize for me, because I got about a minute and a half, but summarize why the United States could not any longer stand on the sidelines and literally supplement. And I'll go back to the Obama administration, which gave them billions of dollars in bad faith, because they never were honest with us in negotiations. And the Obama administration, which said, or the Biden administration, has said, I'm going to take off sanctions, allow you to have billions of dollars more to then fund terrorism throughout the entire regions, which American died by. And now they want to be a nuclear power? Just tell me what the consequences are long-term in American lives, what the potential, even if it's a 10% chance that they could kill millions of people, wouldn't that be a reason to act?
I think, sir, as you pointed out, and the president has been clear that and the vice president as well, that we will ensure that and the strategy makes clear that we will deny Iran a nuclear weapon. The Islamic Republic was rebuilding its military capabilities, and so the military campaign is designed to degrade that. It's designed to take advantage of a range of realistic outcomes, but it's clearly a threat to the United States, to Israel, to our allies and partners in the Gulf and beyond.
And I'll just use my last 15 seconds to say it's interesting when we lost 2,462 lives in Afghanistan and we had already paid the price, we then gave it back to the same people we took it from, and that's the Biden administration's legacy. With that, I yield.
Gentleman's time has expired. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from California, Mr. Sestak.
Congressman Rich McCormick of Georgia, a Republican, a former Marine, and a member of the House Armed Services Committee, was given several minutes to question a senior defense official about one of the most consequential military operations in modern American history. And what did he do with that time? He didn't ask how many civilians have died. He didn't ask what the legal basis for this war is. He didn't ask whether Congress, his own institution, should have been consulted before American bombs fell on a sovereign nation. Instead, he used his time to deliver a stump speech, blaming Obama, blaming Biden, praising the Abraham Accords, and assuring the American public that this is, quote, not a forever war, a phrase, I might add, that has preceded every forever war in recent American memory. A sitting member of Congress, whose constitutional duty is to provide oversight over the executive branch and the military, chose instead to act as a defense attorney for the administration's war policy. He didn't challenge the witness, he coached the witness. He asked leading questions, answered most of them himself, and left just enough time for the Pentagon official to echo the talking points back. McCormick invoked the 1,983 Beirut barracks bombing over 200 Marines killed as justification for today's military action. That tragedy happened over 40 years ago, under a Republican president, Ronald Reagan, who responded by withdrawing American forces from Lebanon. McCormick conveniently omitted that part. He referenced billions of dollars given to Iran under Obama and Biden, a familiar talking point that strips away all context, the fact that the JCPOA was a multilateral agreement endorsed by major world powers, designed precisely to prevent Iran from acquiring nuclear weapons. An agreement, it bears repeating, that the first Trump administration unilaterally abandoned in 2018, setting the stage for the very nuclear escalation Republicans now cite as justification for war. He called Iran's leadership mentally unstable, a characterization that, whatever its merits, raises an uncomfortable question. If your argument for bombing a country is that its leaders are irrational, how exactly do you predict they won't respond irrationally? McCormick wants it both ways. Iran is simultaneously too dangerous to leave alone and too weak to fight back. That is not a strategy. That is wishful thinking with a defense budget. And then there was the Afghanistan line, the emotional closer. 2,462 lives lost, and we gave it back to the same people we took it from. It's a powerful line. It's also a breathtaking act of historical amnesia. It was the first Trump administration that negotiated directly with the Taliban in Doha, excluding the Afghan government entirely from those talks. It was President Trump who signed the withdrawal agreement. McCormick knows this. He simply chose not to say it. Perhaps the most telling moment in this entire exchange was what was never said. Not once did McCormick mention the War Powers Act. Not once did he assert Congress's constitutional authority to declare war. Not once did he ask when this limited projected war, his words, will end, what victory looks like, or what happens the day after. He didn't ask about the Strait of Hormuz, about oil prices, about the thousands of American service members now in harm's way across the Gulf, about the retaliatory strikes already hitting our allies. The founders, who wrote Article 1 of the Constitution, the article that gives Congress, not the President, the power to declare war, would not recognize what happened in that hearing room today. And frankly, the American public, many of whom will bear the costs of this war in ways we cannot yet imagine, deserves better than what Congressman McCormick offered them.